Back in the N64 era, Nintendo was having third-party support problems almost as badly as they were with the Wii U. Hopefully those days are coming to an end, but for a moment, think about it. How many highly selling games from Squaresoft, Capcom, and Konami do you remember for the N64? Yep, you didn't even need to try. Now to be fair, they did have some support, not counting the masters of the N64. You would see games coming from THQ, Midway, and Hudson Soft. Of those three listed, I like to think that Nintendo had the closest relationship with the B. To the best of my knowledge, they made 3 Bomberman games and were allowed to develop the Mario Party series back in an age when Nintendo tried to keep their mascots caged up inside their headquarters. They were also going to do the Advance War games on the N64, but it didn't work out. And because the title spoils everything, and I'm sure you want me to get to the point already, we're here to look at the 3rd Bomberman game release for my favorite Nintendo system. The only thing I remember hearing about Bomberman64 TSA was from a simple advertisement in an EGM magazine. Unlike Bomberman64 or Hero that got Spider-Man rip-off songs for commercials. Sold! This was apparently the only thing they could afford in the budget for advertising. And if you're in the UK and are saying that you've never heard of this game, well, that's because it never came out in your area for reasons I couldn't find or try to make up. I was able to play this game when it first came out back on May 28th, 2000, but it wasn't permanently a part of my collection until about 9 years later and got it used for about $40. I thought that was pretty expensive for a used game like this, but if you look at how much it costs now, if you've got it, hold on to it for dear life! Most of the reviews back then weren't too positive on this one, but from what I've noticed, many of the fans who did get it seem to cherish it. And seeing as how Bomberman has come back from the digital grave, and I was already planning to review this and actually had to change this part of the script for relevancy, why not? Will I review Super Bomberman R? I'd like to, but I can't afford a Switch yet, so I'm gonna have to put out more reviews if I want to buy more games to review. And I guess this is as good a time as any to say this. I actually made a review for this game back in late 2009, but I never uploaded it. Why? Turns out they're inside of a fake black hole, and the only way that they can escape is to destroy all the gravity generators that are hidden on all the planets. How did I have subscribers back then? Because I didn't want to lower the amazing background music, I raised both audio formats and learned the hard way what an idiotic thought that was. Instead of simply going back and re-narrating and editing everything again, I was too fatigued with the project and wanted to move on to another video. Yeah, a big reason for me wanting to review this game but hesitating was because of that. But I think it's time I finally put all this behind me for good. And it's for the better this way, because going back to play it again, I found more things to enjoy, yet new things that bothered me, so I can make this a little more fleshed out. Even before that, I had always remembered this game as being an ironic upgrade to Bomberman64, and I'm sure many of you know how much I love Bomberman64. I just did a ton to play of it as soon as it was available on the Wii U's Virtual Console. But does that mean I love this one just as much? Well, what are we waiting for? Let's find out! So one day, Bomberman was cruising the galaxy with an egg he had discovered, when all of a sudden he gets pulled into the gravity well of a black hole. Being the fearless and experienced space adventurer he is, he quickly panics. My hero! What? No, it isn't! It's actually a fake black hole used for capturing planets. However, he is thrown in a prison cell along with the egg. No problem, I'll just blow the doors off. What? They stole my Firestone! I need that to make bombs! In this game, apparently, the lore of the Bomberman universe changes more than a FNAF theory. I'm gonna starve in this place! Maybe I won't have to. Ah! I didn't mean it! Well, I might have, but I didn't know you were... the baby of a Pikachu and a Kirby? Even its name sounds like a combination of the two. Pommy. Well, when this guy goes to sleep, he goes into an egg. And not wanting to be stuck to rot or fight everyone with his bare... appendages? He goes off, gets your Firestone back. Lousy off-screen action hogging all the fun. And now both of you are trying to escape the clutches of the BHB army. Just off the record, the BHB doesn't really have a defined acronym. It could be Black Hole Base, Black Hole Bandits, and I used to think it was Black Hole Bombers, but nobody besides Bomberman actually uses bombs in this story, not counting that one funny moment. Which I actually like, as everybody in Bomberman64 used bombs and had other abilities, making you feel a bit less special. So who are these guys and what are they doing? Well, they call themselves the Astro Knights, led by... I'm not gonna lie, I have trouble pronouncing about half of the names in this game. They've been using the fake black hole to capture planets to find the elemental stones, which will unlock a great and terrible evil. And as long as Bomberman has at least one of them, then they might as well have a tea party, because that's basically what Plan B could have been. So now the entire army, including animals in their natural habitat and mythical creatures, want to present you in a coffin to their leader. Fortunately, Bomberman gets help besides, "I'm the greatest at hiding in a corner," from the Scourge of the Spaceways, a rough and tough space pirate who... No, that's just a shop owner. It's actually this cute girl. Not exactly an original twist, but holy crap, that's an adorable smile for 64 bits. Hi. So basically, it's collect the elemental stones, stop the gravity generators, and escape. But here's the kicker. There are two endings to this game. The bad and the good ending. Quite honestly, the only more accurate labels would be the "feeling good time joy they all lived happily ever after" ending, and the "oh, we screwed up everything and now we're all gonna die" ending. Now, I feel like I've kind of spoiled the endings just a tiny bit, but I won't tell you right now what triggers the "oh god, what have I done" results. I'll save that for the test. For the moment, I'll just say that there are two things that give you the "I'm sorry, universe" conclusion, and neither one of them will have to make you restart your entire game. Plus, you'd have to willingly allow or have your controller be unplugged for one of those conditions to be met, so don't sweat too much about that. The second attack structure is similar to Bomberman64 in a few areas, but there are some noticeable differences, along with a few cool upgrades, also some bad ones. The best way I can describe this game is that it's an action puzzle adventure, and it's really hard to think of that without having a Zelda image in your head, but that's the best I can come up with. Bomberman himself can't jump and starts off only being able to walk and drop bombs. The first two rooms feel like torture because of your limitations. His abilities of being able to kick a bomb, as well as picking them up, throwing, and making them supersized, have been designated to power-ups. More on that in a bit. He can grab ledges if he's about to fall off, but only when you're lightly pushing on the control stick. Think Mario 64's tiptoeing. Throughout practically the whole game, you explore one planet at a time, go from room to room, solve puzzles or collect items, kill all the enemies that might open some doors, take on one of the Astro Knights, gain a new kaboom! Finish the rest of the world until you make it to the black hole generator, which is basically a puzzle-focused room, and the only level not set up like this is the base. Each room is set to a fixed camera angle, though there are some rooms that give you a new viewpoint depending on where you entered it. The only ones that bothered me was this one that hit a very important doorway, this one where there is no camera change and you can't see the room containing a costume part, more on that later, this one where you could just barely see a switch on the other side of this bridge that looks too close to the ground from my perspective to kick a bomb under it, and crossing the pit of chance, because unless you watch the hint video, you'd just be gambling on where to set that wind bomb. Unlike Bomberman64, but not unlike Hero, you have a health system, so yes, you can be a little stupid with your endless supply of bombs. But should you lose all the love or encounter something that would give you an instant death, like fall from the clouds, take a dip in lava, go for a swim, etc., and you'll have to use a continue. The only good news is that for a certain amount of tries, you're allowed to keep all your power-ups and upgrades, with all the main puzzles you've solved completed and items collected. And speaking of items, you get your basic more bombs, better explosions, gaining speed, learning to kick, learning to throw, full firepower, invincibility, health, remote control, easily the best in the game. Also the combination of having invincibility and remote bombs? I don't think I need to say anymore. Money for the shop, food for your pet Pommy, and then there's... downgrades. Yes, they actually snuck in some poison mushrooms here. There is only one time in the game where you actually want them, but I'm not there yet. After you've defeated an Astro Knight, who you usually see halfway through the world, you gain a new power that either helps you for solving puzzles and or kills some enemies faster. Examples: ice freezes some surfaces, allowing you to get across, and has a far better hit range than your basic firebomb. It won't scratch these crabs, but it will insta-kill these mermen. Electric powers up machines, goes through solid objects, and can also eliminate machine-like enemies quicker. And the wind bomb can push you across gaps without causing you damage. But you can't stop until you hit a wall or a surface. Go ahead and laugh at that animation. I do. Also, if you try to blow something up and hear this, a different bomb is the answer. In fact, a bomb in general is the answer to pretty much everything, but knowing when to use it, how to use it, and which one to use are the main problems you need to figure out. Once you've cleared a world, you can go back to visit it as many times as you'd like to collect all the balloons for costumes in the multiplayer mode, money for whatever your heart desires in the shop, more snacks for your CPU friend, a little more detail on that soon, and a lesson they took from the Mega Man X series. If you have the right bomb and are on the right planet, you can get a Guardian Armor part. Collect all 4: legs, arms, body, and head in that order. The legs will allow you to permanently have the bomb kick, arms allow you to pick up, throw, and pump up bombs without the power-up, body lets you get out of dizzy states faster even though pressing A and B like a madman works, and the head gives you the remote control ability. But you still can't use it during one-on-one fights and generator rooms. The only difference is it's not where you get the part, but the order in which you get them. Thankfully, the same 4 planets will be the ones holding them. Heading out of the single player and into the multiplayer mode for a bit, you have up to 4 player battles, and if you complete the challenges and get the gold trophies, you'll unlock more modes like Keys where you blow up everything to find said keys to win, King mode where you blow up the other team's statues, Score Attack where it's who can get the most points by blowing up the most enemies, Battle Royale which is get the most kills on the other players, and Survival. My only real nasty look about this mode is that your explosions are back to the traditional cross shape, and most of the time it's very easy to know how to get out of the way. Random power-ups like Skull and Evil return to shake things up and mess with your head, and they can help with catching others off guard, as well as dying and then becoming a ghost to get some revenge. Plus other modes like Kings and Keys don't really have an issue with the cross shape. All of this helped keep the multiplayer mode engaging for a good time and laughs. That sounded like a decent enough transition for the positives, so let's do that. I guess I'll begin with the smaller but finer details. First up, the characters. Pommy, who usually speaks in the third person and thinks highly of himself despite pretending he's not there during night fights and generator parties, is actually competent. His AI has never caused me to die from what I can recall. He's been able to punch enemies over cliffs or stun them so I can throw them over cliffs, and he doesn't have a health meter of his own. You can even use a second controller and have somebody else play as him. In other words, he's Tails. Okay, yes, there have been times where he gets in the way if you're pushing statues and he's in front of you, but all you have to do is push the up C button and he comes right to you. I used to think he was rather annoying, but then I observed him a bit more. He's the Navi of this game, but instead of pointing out the painfully obvious info, it's usually done in a cutscene where he's either teasing Bomberman because he can't swim, or something to that effect. You'd think that falling off these platforms or touching lava doesn't need to be said, but somehow it just feels natural. Sometimes he'll just want to play around instead of stating the duh facts. And at the very least, he always believes in you no matter what the opposition is. After you've told him you can defeat the whole army. He's also able to change and get stronger depending on the food you've gathered for him, but it won't happen until you've saved and entered another level and have acquired all the food you needed for him. You'd be surprised what this little guy can become. Once you've beaten a world, you normally get a cutscene with Captain Goth and the Astro Knights, tickets on sale, discussing the events that just took place, and the Knights usually get into an argument over trivial matters, meaning we actually get some personality from these guys. They are as one-dimensional as they come, but compared to the story and character development of Bomberman64, it was a tremendous leap forward. Back then, you had little to no character interaction, and you usually just got, "Yo, hi! You wanna fight me?" As a matter of fact, clearing planets in different orders will let you see different interactions. I didn't even see this cutscene until just recently when I was getting footage for the review. It can actually clear a few things up, but it can also leave a little mess behind, such as Icy here asking for your name when it was already said after clearing Horizon before Aquanet. And what good timing! He returns! Yes, this is basically the only real connection of Bomberman64 at all! I expect more from the same team, but whatever. Regulus, now calling himself Ballzeep, has joined up with these guys and is overjoyed to know that he gets a chance to catch up and kill you! Though I think it's rather funny that he actually helps you more than he battles you. Best frenemies for life! Personally, I prefer Regulus over Max. Not sure if that's how the general fanbase feels, but when you fight Regulus, he's either going to be a laughable and predictable pushover, or a reason to buy a new controller depending on how you handle his tactics. Speaking of which, I do get a blast, pun intended, what are you gonna do about it, from the Astro Knight battles. They put up far more of a challenge than any horde of enemies, and disable any remote bombs you might be carrying to make it less of a cakewalk. Although it does seem strange that they get easier the later on in the game you go. But that could just be because you can buy more health, and the ice bomb practically leaves them with nowhere to run. Some of them even have one-hit kill moves, and they are unbelievably, pathetically easy to dodge, and can be effortlessly turned against them. If you get hit by this, then you deserve to die. And to kill two birds with one stone again, I love how there's an actual health system this time. No more chasing after a heart like Sonic desperately clinging onto a ring for dear life. And bombs, as mentioned earlier, have their own effects and uses instead of having two different versions, regular and... Some are so powerful you can only use one at a time, while others can let you use up to 4. Some of these bombs are used quite well for the puzzles they throw at you, though I do wish there was more of a balance, as the ice bomb seems pretty OP as they have more range, versatility, and can be used faster when compared to the others. Another thing that could be considered OP is the soundtrack. I loved Bomberman64's soundtrack, and I'd say that the Second Attack soundtrack is on par with this one, so get ready to hear me gush over this one. Actually, it's probably better for you to hear it for yourself. Have a listen. Sadly, nearly every track loops very early, giving only about a minute before it repeats. To try and compensate for this, almost every world has a remix version play after beating the Astro Knight. Pommy, Lilith, and King Dark have their own music piece that easily represent the characters. You've already heard how unbelievably cool Lilith's theme is, but listen to a bit of the bad guys track and how it imposes an iron grip and relentless despair. One of the final pieces, lovingly fan-titled, I think, as Reunion and Farewell flawlessly hits the mark about how wonderful it is to see someone you care about once again, but can also be used for saying a heart-ripping goodbye. Though it does lose a little bit of that effect as it is played for the credits to the bad ending. Just to see if I can get a shock out of some of you, there are 7 music composers and 1 music producer for this game. You lied to me, Wiki! You left Tomokazu Kudo out! Oh, and my apologies for possibly butchering the pronunciations. Tomokazu Kudo, Yasunori Matsuda, Hidenobu Utsuki, Tomohiko Kira, Tomori Kudo, Hiyoro Yamanaka, Yoshitaka Hirota, and Kenji Hiramatsu. If any of those guys sounded familiar, then man, you're hardcore! For everyone else, Yasunori Mitsuda was a composer for Chrono Trigger, with Yoshitaka Hirota being the sound design guy. Meanwhile, Tomori Kudo, Hiyoro Yamanaka, Keiji Hiramatsu, and Yasunori Mitsuda helped work on... Yeah! I wouldn't be surprised if a number of you just left this video to go download the Second Attack soundtrack. And lastly, the battle mode. It's pretty much the backbone of the Bomberman series and what kept people coming back for each entry. The ones that had a battle mode anyway. Each time you play, it feels different from before, allowing you to replay it multiple times and having it feel like everyone is on the same skill level. And if you have vengeful possessing ghosts on, then get ready to hear loud high-pitched shouts of, "No, get away from me!" The models have definitely taken a step back in presentation, but you'll be more worried about surviving than how everyone looks like a poor man's Rayman. And now, the next transition. Unfortunately, not every step was taken in the right direction, and a couple of minor but noticeable aspects were either changed or removed. To address the biggest elephant in the room, it's in the 3rd room we just passed. Backtracking is prevalent in this game, no matter what level you're in. Sometimes it's as easy as going back to just 2 rooms ago to press a switch to open a cage, to open another switch to open a door in a room you just left. Or even just collect the items in the different rooms and go back and forth between them. At first it's not all bad and almost easy to turn a blind eye to, but then there are times where all you need to do is start off in the wrong direction and they'll open your eyes and rub salt in them. I'll help you out with 2 of the most frustrating locations. Go right instead of left in Neverland until you can't progress anymore, and make sure you kill these muncher things to open a door on the left. Sometimes I forget about that one myself. And in Epicrew, make sure you start at the horror house and open the door so you can come back in the easy way. I have no advice on the first part of Migraine Base, except don't get lost. Good luck! A number of rooms will respawn the same enemies as soon as you come back in, and you can't leave until you're killed for the 15th time. So if going back and forth doing the same thing doesn't bother you, it will. To be fair, levels like Aquanet, Horizon, and Epicrew focus more on puzzles and trying to figure out what you're supposed to do. But then there are places that go for a more hit a switch and mow down the enemy grunts every return of visit feeling, like Neverland, Starlight, and the embodiment of repetition and torture! Speaking of which, it probably has the most memorable puzzle in the game, but not for a likable reason. The good news is that they actually give you what you need before you begin. The bomb kick, more bombs, and fire downs. Yes, the downgrade will help keep you alive, and after clearing it all the way through, you can get a max fire power-up at the top. So there was some thought put into it, which only makes a couple of the earlier segments confusing, as you are basically going to hurt yourself a few times on your first attempt. And is there any warning that you'll need fire downs to avoid potentially killing yourself before going into them? No. So in case you haven't caught on by now, it can be a tiny bit annoying at times, but thankfully it doesn't feel too bothersome and is rather manageable given how condensed the worlds feel. Not counting kill me with fire! The Astro Knights and generator rooms are the moments I always look forward to the most, but here's where they could have taken the approach that Bomberman64 did. In that game, each world had 4 parts to it, and you could revisit them at any time after you've cleared them. That feature would have been rather nice to have had here, as once you've beaten the puzzle and solved the boss, or something like that, you can't do it again unless you start a new file. I find it even more confusing, as it seems as though the worlds could have been broken up into 4 parts once again. First part, fight. Third part, generator. This could have worked if it wasn't for the last 3 worlds holding the idea back, mainly because Epicrew and Thantos really don't have all that much in the 3rd act, as Epicrew houses a whopping 2 rooms, and Thantos has a rock. I mean a block that can't be destroyed until you've beaten Bullzeep. I'm not too heartbroken about the loss of replaying the Break the Generator segments, because as it turns out, if you do end up going back for any little extra collectibles, you have to exit the world through the portal at the end, otherwise you'll lose everything you've collected, including costume parts and Guardian armor. While the final headache is replayable, I can see that it would be hard to implement the split up because of an optional potential spoiler. At the very least, they could have let me unlock the ability to fight them again in the shop instead of seeing a tutorial on their moves. It does make me wonder why these 2 have so little to them after the Astro Knight, but if I had to take a guess, it's probably because you don't need to beat them in order to get to the final world. Pop quiz! Let's see how many of you were paying attention or did your homework. What 2 things caused the bad ending to happen?
Doing evil things?
No.
Is it cheese?
You're hopeless. Anyone else?
I know, but I cheated by watching the video again.
Points for honesty, but I'm gonna tell your parents you cheated on a test. Fine. It was... yeah. That's right. Then do you also know the second thing that causes it? You're so close! As I said, you pretty much had to stand still for it to happen, and dodging their Super Saiyan attacks is almost stupidly easy. The only ones that could be a potential problem are from the black holes that Bullzeep conjures up, and that's not even his charged killing move. Those can be a little tricky to... But don't worry, only one of the fights causes the "there is no hope" ending, and the fight doesn't even happen unless you have all 7 elemental stones. So, relax. So what's the final verdict? To be honest, I'm always at a standstill when it comes to this title. The fights in generator rooms are my favorite parts, but it's a one-time deal per playthrough. Except for the one place I hate! Go figure. The frame rate can be a little cringeworthy at times, but that was almost normal for N64 games. I can never find anything good to say about backtracking itself, especially when I have to kill the same crony for the 73rd time. It can make some of the levels look rather lazy for doing this, but at the very least, it's confined to small locations instead of making you travel from one corner of a huge world to another. The soundtrack is stunning, and the characters have life to them. And even if you're not fond of the single player mode, the multiplayer party system can still offer up some laughs. Ignoring the absolutely ludicrous price of what this game goes for, it's very difficult for me to give it a recommendation level. No, unlike Brawl, it's because of indecision and not because of a problem that was beyond the developer's control. Oh, don't worry, I'm still going to give it a recommendation level, but the tiebreaker system I normally use is starting to feel outdated and flawed, and I want to come up with a better one in the future. For the moment, I can say I had fun with the game, there are some strong aspects, but the level designs for the most part just don't stand out. It's virtually everything else that does. I think the main reason I can give it a big push to a favorable recommendation level is because of the multiplayer mode giving it a lot more replay value. You're going to have lots of memories that contain laughter, so that's going to work in its favor. A 4 out of 5, a couple of flaws, but overall a good game. You've already heard how unbelievably kawaii Lilith's theme is. Lilith's theme. Holy crap, this is hard. Another thing that could be OP is this soundtrack. I can't reach it. Another thing that could be considered OP is this soundtrack. I love Bomberman64's soundtrack, and I just messed that up. Here's some extra little tips that I decided to put in for the credits. You can stop kick bombs with the R button, you can pick up stunned enemies and throw them over cliffs, and it's one of the few N64 games that also lets you use the D-pad. I didn't know that until about just 3 weeks ago. Oh, and for some reason, spinning around while charging up a bomb will make the bomb grow faster. I have no idea why that is. The bomb bounce from Bomberman64 returns with good news and bad news. The happy, it's really only used to get costume pieces and not for solving puzzles, and the bounce itself feels more natural. The sad, it can be really frustrating to get it set up properly, and some of them are either hidden to unfair levels of trolling or require thinking for a mechanic that is barely used. I had to look up online how to do some of these. And some of the costumes are locked behind a door that you can't open until you've cleared the world. And I think you still need the N64 memory card to use the costumes in battle mode, and the batteries in mine are dead now. The only reason I didn't bring this up in the negative section is because the costumes really don't add much to the game besides an alternate look in battle mode, so it's really not hurting anything. Oh, and once you've gotten all the collectibles in a world, it'll say complete. That's kind of neat. Enemies that touch you can either make you dizzy, take a heart, or a fate worse than death, drain a power-up level down to 0. If it happens to your speed, it's going to suck! I remember when I first played this game and thought that full power could only be bought once, so I saved it for the final level each time. But it can actually be bought every time you clear or exit a world, and I was pretty mad when I found that out years later. My revenge on your false advertisement is your shame, buddy. Well, that's strange. There's 2 video plugs. Then again, I am in both of them, so let's go with that. One is for the video I did for Omega Snake's channel for his April Fool's Day boss fight strategy video on how to beat the Plasma race in Pikmin 3. And the other one is where I reprise my role of Victor and ask the Sonic Heroes. And while you enjoy those, I'm gonna go work on another video like the review for Battlefront EA, or Yooka-Laylee, or List. Later, everyone!